we're just going to go through some different places where you can go and find PHP jobs that are out there and that are available. And again, this is one to kind of be helpful, but also dispel the myth a little bit that there's not any PHP jobs out there, because that's often the connotation when people are asking me this question. So again, this was all spawned from an email that I got. The gist of it was, hey, you're always telling us to learn PHP and you're always recommending, that you can use PHP to get a job in IT and so forth, but I can't find any PHP jobs. So where do I find PHP jobs? So again, I'm going to use kind of the tool that I use quite a bit, and that is Indeed.com. Now, again, I explained this in an earlier podcast. You may or may not have caught that. Again, if you haven't heard about the 10-episode challenge, I want to encourage you to go back and listen to the last 10 episodes of the show so that you can keep caught up on all of this stuff, because I reference past episodes a decent amount, and if you haven't heard them, then you're going to be lost a little bit. But I've used Indeed.com in the past a little bit just to show the numbers, because it's really a job search engine, and it does a pretty good job of giving you some idea of the job market nationwide and what jobs people are actually posting. And so I just did a simple search over on Indeed for PHP and just did it nationwide. So nationwide, as of right now, of this recording, there are 21,067 jobs that contain the word PHP. Now you might say, well, yeah, but they're saying PHP along with some other stuff. Well, I look at the titles of these. I see PHP developer, PHP developer, PHP developer, web services developer 3, PHP developer, full stack PHP developer, full stack LAMP developer, which is basically the same thing, web applications developer, full stack software developer, PHP developer, full stack PHP developer, web developer. So I think you get the point. Most of these are very specific to being a PHP developer. And if we look at where some of these are from, again, I'm in the United States, so this kind of lines up for me. But the first one's in Illinois. We have Oklahoma City, California, Virginia, California, Florida, Missouri, Virginia, North Carolina, California. This one's a remote job. Florida, Utah, Indiana. I mean, yes, you're going to have some of these bundled up in the bigger areas like California. Maybe actually you didn't see a ton from New York, which is kind of interesting because I've had somebody say that before, that out in that area you don't see as many. So be it. In New York, you may not find as many PHP jobs, but basically for anybody else, there's still jobs that are kind of all over the place here. In terms of salary, so of those jobs, 18,000 of them pay $60,000 a year or more. So the vast majority, 18,000 of the 21,000 pay $60,000 or more. Now think about that for a second. Let's say you're just coming out of high school or even just coming out of college, and you're looking for a job, and your entry-level job is going to be around $50,000 to $60,000 a year. I can tell you most even college graduates would kill for a job that paid that much. I know college graduates who come out and their first entry-level job in their field, their degree field, is $35,000, $40,000 a year. Now, again, that's not everything, but $60,000 as a base is really pretty good. But it's kind of even better because if you look at 75,000 plus, there's still 15,000 jobs available. So 2/3 of the jobs that are available on here pay $75,000 a year or more. And then all the way up to 110,000 plus, there's 4,000 jobs available there. If you look at the type of job, they're full-time. 17,893 as of this recording are full-time. There's 2,500 that are contract, only 700 that are part-time, a few hundred internships, temporary, and commission, or barely any. Actually, if you look at location, now they didn't show up in the first listings that I looked at here, but 1,200 of those, which must be the most, are in New York. 1,000 are in San Francisco, 600 in Boston, 500 in Seattle, 500 in Washington, D.C. So again, all the major cities are probably going to have the most of those. Experience level, most of them are mid-level jobs, so about 10,000. Probably roughly about half are mid-level jobs. There's 5,100 entry-level jobs and 2,400 senior-level jobs. So that gives you some idea of the snapshot of the market itself. But again, I go right on here, do a simple search for PHP, and find a bunch of jobs looking for PHP developers in all sorts of different places around the country. Now, if I narrow this down just to where I live, then if I do a search for PHP, there's 30 jobs available in my local area for a PHP developer. Now, that number may or may not be a ton, but the thing is you only need one. So this is just me going right where I'm at already. If you're someone who's younger and just coming out and getting into this career, would it be worth maybe moving somewhere that has more of these jobs? I'm sure if I did a search in the California area, it'd be a lot more than 30. And a lot of the searches that you would do for any job in here would probably be in maybe the 100 or less than 100 range, I would imagine, just because this area is only so big. So there's 30 jobs available that I could go out right now and apply for, and all I need is one of those. So again, and again, we're just covering PHP here. Now, if we do the thing that I talked about that I don't think most people think of when they go to do a job like this, they would maybe do the PHP search, but oftentimes it's the applications built on the language that are more popular. So in this particular case, if I do a search for WordPress, that adds another 6,000 jobs that are out there. So again, we had 21,000 before. If I do WordPress, that's still PHP. It's a specific application, but at the end of the day, it's built on PHP. So it's really a PHP related job. There's another 6,000 jobs that are available for a WordPress developer. And those jobs are probably, if you're someone who knows WordPress, are going to maybe be a little bit easier to get because it's more specific. And so less people are going to know. If you take the full pool of PHP developers, there's going to be a certain segment that know WordPress. So you're competing with less people. How all that shakes out, who really knows? But again, it just adds more jobs available for you. If I do Drupal, there's another roughly 3,000 jobs available for Drupal developers. And again, these are just a couple that I've done. You could look at all of the different applications that are out there that are built on PHP and start to find, okay, the job market starts to expand a little bit and there's more opportunities than maybe I thought originally. Now, and again, this is just Indeed.com. This isn't the end all be all. There's Monster and there's all sorts of other job sites that are out there that you could go search on. I think this gives you a good idea, but it's certainly not going to give you everything. You may have local job boards that are even better, that certain communities, they have these local job boards that tend to be really popular, and they don't even post on the bigger sites because they know they can get from who they need from that local job board or job site or whatever. So again, that would be another place for you to look as well. The other thing is this is just going to be, for the most part, so this is going to be focused primarily on just regular, 9 to 5-ish type jobs, but that's not the whole market in terms of what's available to you. Okay, so there's a whole nother segment of market out there, and that is freelance work. So again, if I just go and I look, if I go on Upwork and I just do a quick search for PHP, again, there's 11,119 jobs available or projects available over on Upwork. And I can kind of look through some of the filtering here. This is one of the things, I did a video on this a while back that one of the big mistakes that I think freelancers make when using Upwork is not taking advantage of the filtering options that are on here. So, for example, I can filter by client history. This is one of the big problems that people have is they'll see projects that are posted by clients who maybe have never hired anybody before and they end up flaking out and so forth. Well, I can actually help get rid of that because I can get rid of what are called no hires. So I can uncheck this box under client history and it'll get rid of people who've never hired anybody. And so there's an option for 1 to 9 hires and then 10 plus hires. If we look at just those two together, so it's somebody who's at least hired one freelancer, there's just a little over 7,000 jobs available out of the 11,000 that are on here. So still a ton of jobs available for people from clients who've actually hired someone on the site, which can immediately kind of sift out a ton of riffraff. I can also change it by budget. So I can slide this budget slider over to 1,000 to 100 jobs that have at least $1,000 budget. Of the 11,000 that I originally mentioned, there's still 6,157 as of right now that jobs available that have a budget of $1,000 or greater. Okay, so a good market, right? That's a good potential there. Of these, there's roughly 4,700 that are hourly jobs and 1,500 that are fixed price. There's 1,700 that are entry level, 22 intermediate, and 1,700 expert. Okay, so you can come through and filter all of this. There's, for the project length, there's 1,300 of these jobs. And actually, these are the 1K jobs and above. Let me go ahead and slide this back so I can get you to all 11,000 here. But of the 11,000, there are 1,300 that are 6 months or greater. They're looking for someone who can work 6 months or greater. Of those jobs, 3,500 are part-time and only 1,100 are full-time. Okay, so, and again, over here, that makes a little bit more sense. And if I look at some of the names of these projects, PHP and MySQL developer, 55 an hour, WordPress theme developer, I need a WordPress expert, correct cross-site scripting vulnerabilities, Salesforce expert, spreadsheet grid, WordPress developer, fix errors on site, JavaScript, jQuery, PHP developer, so minor customizations on Magento. So again, these are related jobs. These are jobs that make sense. These aren't, it's not a bunch of riffraff. Again, that's just PHP. You can still come over and do searches for WordPress. Matter of fact, if you do a search for WordPress on Upwork, you get more jobs. You get 12,945 jobs available here. And again, you can go through and filter a lot of this stuff. 1,900 of them they want somebody for 6 months or longer. 5,100 are part-time. There's still almost a little over 9,000 that from clients who've actually hired someone at least once before, and so forth. So tons and tons of jobs that are available over here on Upwork. So you have Indeed.com where you can get the regular 9 to 5-ish type jobs. And then you have Upwork where you can do the freelancing type stuff. You pool all of that together. There's a lot of opportunity out there for you to get started somehow, to get working with this somehow. And then the thing is as you build up your experience, as you build up your portfolio, getting hired is going to become less and less of the problem. And it's going to be more about, what do I really want to do myself? The other part of this all is that so this is somewhat debated, but there's a lot of jobs out there that go unadvertised. So again, we have Indeed, the search engine, we have Upwork. These are all advertised jobs and projects, but there's still a significant chunk of jobs out there that are unadvertised. Now, the exact number is estimated or debated. For the kind of the conventional wisdom for a long time was that number was 75 to 95%. That's been kind of challenged. But even the people that challenge it will say that the number's closer to 38%. Well, to my mind, that's still a fairly high percentage of jobs that go unadvertised. And they'll say, with some industry, really depends on the industries. There's some industries where it'll be as low as 20%. Well, 20% still seems like a fairly high number to me when you're thinking about companies that have jobs that they don't advertise at all. So, and it's debated about what the difference between unpublished and the advertised. Essentially, what it comes down to is a lot of companies will have a position open, and before they ever put out a posting on their site, or put it on Indeed, or put it on Monster, or any of these other places, they'll either leverage their personal network or they'll leverage their employee network and see if they can find someone within those networks. And often they do. The number of people that get hired through the employee or personal networks is fairly high. I thought they said like 70% or something like that. So anyway, these jobs tend to go unadvertised, unpublished. Again, the terminology is a little gray there, but they're not jobs that you're necessarily going to go out and go on Monster or some of these other places and find. You're going to find them because you're a friend of a friend. Or I've been reading this book, fascinating book, where they talk about cold calling and companies for jobs, because they'll have positions open and available. And it sounds, you'll hear people who really advise against that. It sounds maybe a little scary, but the higher rate from people who do this, from some of the studies they've done, is fairly high, like 65-70% of people who will do this, call a company, will get hired within a certain percentage of time or whatever. So the higher rate is really high for this kind of method. And so the book talks about why you should do this cold calling method and then how to go about doing it or whatever. But the point being that there's a lot of jobs out there that aren't advertised, and there's a lot of options that are available to you to go out and get one. There's really, in my mind, there's really no excuse not to be out there going after this. And that kind of leads me to the next thing that I want to talk about, which is, I think the question really here really isn't, are there jobs available, or there are no jobs available. That's not what it comes down to. What it really comes down to is actually getting the job, and some fear or anxiety around actually going out and applying and getting the job and so forth. And so I want to kind of just wrap this all up with talking a little bit about, how do you actually go about getting one of these jobs? Because there's obviously plenty of them available, but it comes down to actually going and doing it. And so I think there's three things that are important for getting the job. The first one, I think you need confidence. And this is probably really the number one roadblock that people face, especially in the tech world, because you grow up in an environment that can be very accusatory at times, or very hard on you at times. And you get all these people calling you noobs and your code is stupid, or you at least see them doing it to other people who ask questions and so forth. And you kind of start to shell up a little bit and get worried that, if I go and apply for this job and I get hired, I'm going to have some boss or some developer over top of me who's going to call me an idiot and all this stuff. There's a lot of fear that can be built up. And the thing that you need more than anything else is, despite all that, to do it anyway. And so I think what happens a lot of times, and I've done some digging with the people I've talked to a little bit on this. It's a little tricky because people can be sensitive about it, but I've done a little bit of digging, and it seems like a decent number of the people who say there are no jobs out there haven't actually applied for any. And the reason why they haven't applied for any is because they don't think they're qualified yet. And so for me, the confidence part of it is, you need to start applying for jobs that you don't think you can get. Because chances are, most of the jobs you're going to look at, you don't think you're going to be able to get. Right? I like to go back to Chris Sean, right? He applied at a company where they had a whole list of stuff that they wanted the person to know, and he didn't know a lot of that stuff. Now, the average person probably wouldn't have applied, but he had listened to the podcast I'd said over and over and over again to apply. to focus on being a specialist. And that's what he did, because the one thing that was most important to them was that the applicant knew Bootstrap, and he knew Bootstrap, and he built a portfolio and a site to show that off. And they hired him because he was really good with Bootstrap, and they were willing to fill in the rest of the blanks. A lot of the jobs that you would apply for are going to be that way. You're going to look at the list of things that you need to know in order to, they say that they want from you, and you'll always be able to find probably 2 or 3 that you think would disqualify you. Apply anyway. Do it anyway. Because chances are there's nobody out there that has all those skills. Or if there's somebody out there that does have all those skills, they're already hired, or technically or really the position ought to be a higher level position than what it's actually being advertised as. So you need to have confidence. You need to apply for jobs that you don't think that you qualify for, and get over that fear that you're not going to know enough, etc. Now, I'm not saying go apply for the senior level developer position if you're, 3 months into learning how to code. But again, most of the jobs you're going to see out there, you could probably disqualify yourself somehow. Don't let that stop you. The second thing that you need is experience. Experience is one of those things that it really helps deal with the confidence part of it. Ultimately, confidence comes from competence. And so you really need to get out there and get some experience. And experience is really kind of your trump card when it comes to different jobs. It's really a trump card for degree. It's a trump card for a list of qualifications and skills. The more experience you have, really, and especially in something in particular, something specialized, the better. Now, a lot of developers, when I say that, will say, well, it's a catch-22. I can't get hired if I don't have experience, but I can't get experience if I don't get hired. And there's some truth to that, but I would say for the most part, that's really just a self-fulfilling prophecy. It's just something that we allow to stop ourselves. And the reason is because there are still tons of entry-level jobs out there, and those jobs know they're going to have to train you. So it's worth you going out there and taking a entry-level or lower-level job to get the experience. Yeah, you're going to make probably a little less at first, but as the experience is kind of exponential, especially in the tech world, because companies are so hungry for new employees that having a year or 2 of experience can really be a big deal and help to kind of set you apart from a lot of other people. There's so many new people coming in that having just even a few years of experience can really help you move up the income ladder and up in a particular company or industry very, very quickly. So it's worth taking a lower level, maybe lower paying job just to get in the door and get the experience, and then get that 1 or 2 years that you can then leverage to get a higher level job to get paid more, etc. The other thing is you don't have to just get hired. Maybe you're having a tough time doing that. Well, you can always do freelance work, like I just mentioned. Freelance work is available. There's tons and tons of stuff out there. And I think if you are willing to really kind of strategize and work the system, specialize, build a portfolio, it doesn't have to be client work, really focus on writing your profile well, having a good picture, doing all the things that I always talk about, then you set yourself up really well to be able to get freelance work. But even if you can't get freelance work, there's still tons and tons of open source projects that are out there that are available that almost nobody is going to tell you no on. And even if there's no open source projects out there, you can go out and create your own projects on GitHub or wherever. You can contribute. There's things that you can do to get that experience, to build up that resume that don't require you getting hired or getting freelance work. And then you can move into getting freelance work, ultimately a job, etc. There is a pathway there. So again, I really think it's just an excuse to say there's nothing out there available. Nobody's handing me a job, so there's nothing I can do. There's lots and lots of stuff that you can do. Heck, if all else fails, start a YouTube channel and start putting up coding tutorials. I mean, that's really how I started my career. Or go on Stack Overflow and answer questions. Oh, there's so much opportunity available in the tech world today. There are things that you can do. Are some things going to take longer than others? Yes. Are some things harder than others? Yes. But if you really want it, it doesn't matter. Right? You just start taking steps now. If you can't get hired, okay, try freelance. If I can't freelance, let me work on some open source stuff. If I can't do that, let me do my own project. If I can't do that, let me create content. Let me answer questions. There's something that you can be doing right now. What I find most often is it's people don't want to do it. It's not that you can't do it, it's that you don't want to do it. And that's when I'll just go back to questioning, how bad do you really want it? If you really want it, just do it. Do what you have to do. And it'll add up. The last thing then that you need is, I would generally categorize as proof. And experience is kind of that, but the experience part of it is more actually knowing this stuff. Proof is proof that you know it. And so your job history is a big part of that, your portfolio, client testimonials, referrals. The point being, you need to gather all of that stuff up as you go along. And you really want to kind of strategize the different things, different jobs that you take and projects you work on to make sense and all kind of come together to build a kind of robust set of proof, a robust overall resume of what you can and can't do to show up to a job interview or have an application where you have tons and tons of proof of what you're capable of. So again, you want to collect that stuff. You want to strategize a little bit. And what I mean by strategize is, if you're specializing in building membership sites, well, you should have a job history that shows that, a portfolio, testimonials, getting referrals in that industry, etc. Right? It all should fit with where you're ultimately trying to go. And if you just decide to change, then you know, well, I got to change my proof. I have a bunch of proof in this particular niche. Now I want to change and do this over here. I need to start gathering proof here. And again, just strategize it in that way. So again, confidence, experience, and proof. You do those three things, you work on those three things, then I'm convinced that you're going to have a really good foundation for your career. And it's not going to be long before you get hired doing something. You know, one of the big mistakes that I see a lot of developers make is they make learning how to code much harder than it has to be. For example, I see a lot of developers who think the list of skills that they need to learn to master PHP is pages and pages and pages long. It's not. Now, I've said this before, and I will definitely say it again, but there's a foundational set of skills that you need to learn in order to be functional as a PHP developer, meaning that you can execute on projects and get paid. This is the fallacy that is so prevalent in the PHP developer community, that there's this ideal set of skills that you have to learn, and that you have to be the absolute greatest developer in the history of mankind in order to be able to get paid to code. You don't. You simply need to be able to execute on projects. I talk about end results all the time. You need to be able to deliver end results to clients, because that's ultimately what they want. But when you focus on these foundational skills and learning only those first, the things that will allow you to execute on projects, what you realize is that you can start getting paid to code much faster than you probably ever thought, because you haven't set this idealistic, unattainable bar for yourself to reach before you allow yourself to take paid work. You can start now when you can execute on a deliverable, when you can complete a single project, when you can create a contact form or a business website. When you can execute on that, you can start. And you could start then building the life that you wanted, that you got into this all in the first place, instead of continuing to slave away at some job making somebody else rich. Anyway, you can learn these skills in my free course, The Beginner's Guide to PHP, which you can enroll in at johnmorrisonline.com/learnphp. And it's going to teach you these foundational skills so you can get started right now. Again, it's a completely free course that you can take at johnmorrisonline.com/learnphp. Don't wait on this. Head over there right now and get started building that life.